Oh, hey, I meant to get the theme song ready and I forgot.
Oops.
It's all face today. Ladies, gentlemen, children of all ages. Just according to StreamYard, there's nobody even watching yet. So I could. Oh no, now there's people. Now there's people. Hey guys, it's Wednesday. It's another episode of the Mattriarchy. Today we are doing my favorite Green Lantern comic. However, we don't have our entire crew of rowdy comic book readers, and um, because of all of the chaos that we've all been experiencing in our private lives, it appears I'm the only one that read all the books.
I didn't even bring one.
So it's going to be a real interesting experience for folks there. But we are going to be talking about the Green Lantern 189. Am I get the number right there, Hutch?
198.
198. There we have it. And the Green Lantern Core Quarterly #1, the first story in that quarterly. And Just Imagine Stan Lee creating the DC Universe's Green Lantern. Those are the books we're going to be talking about today on the stream. And Hutch, let's go ahead and dive into yours, because yours I think is probably the best one. So let's start with that one.
Okay. All right.
It's going to take some setup, though. Yeah.
It is going to take a little bit of setup, and the reason is
solo layout him. Here. He's got stuff to display.
You put me to the back. There we go. Start to the front. Yeah, we're going a little bit back. This is number 151. I thought what I should do is just catch you up. The reason why 198 is so meaningful is that this is after, well, I'll summarize. In 151, which came out in 1982, this comic book is the first one I ever spent my own money buying. The first Green Lantern book, at least. I don't know where it fares as far as JLA 200 and Captain Carrot #3. I bought all three of those at the same drugstore where my mom worked. So I bought this. It was awesome. It's written by Marv Wolfman. And in it, the problem is Hal gets contacted by the Guardians and they say, hey, you're supposed to be the protector of an entire sector of space. What have you been doing? And he's like, well, I'm fighting Goldface, who is trying to take over Ferris Aircraft. And, and Tattoo Man was shot. And they're like, yeah, you're supposed to be doing a whole sector. You're exiled from that planet for a year. You cannot go to your planet. You have to leave Earth. And so that's what happens in 151. Now, that's for a year, but it takes pretty much almost 20 issues before he goes back. So in this issue, let me just show you the close-up. This is him saying goodbye to Carol Ferris. And notice they say, I love you. There's none of this. I don't really care about you. Marriage is not an option. No, they loved each other back then. But back then they were as close as Ollie and Dinah and Barry and his wife and etc. So
had she been and not been Star Sapphire already at this point?
Numerous times. That goes back to the early Silver Age, like
I
think
remember
they were in single digit issues.
I knew that had happened, but I couldn't remember how all that shook out. I've never been able to quite follow all of the Green Lantern stuff.
And every time she becomes Star Sapphire, they wipe her memory at the end, so she has no memory that she was ever Star Sapphire. And I forget whether they wipe like Hal's memory or something. There's a whole memory wipe thing, which I will be getting to. But this is much later. Look at that beautiful Dave Gibbons art. This is the guy who did Watchmen. Yeah. And he does Green Lanterns very well. I mean, there's a reason why he had a run on here for, I don't know, 20, 30 issues. And so this is Judgment Day. Hal comes back after exile for a year. It was a lot of interesting space stories, really good runs, and a lot of some of those best Alan Moore backup stories were during that time. But anyway, I
have to point something out about this cover, though. There's something I always hated about the Green Lantern design is he really needs like a belt or something that separates the waist from like the crotch area, because it folds in such a weird way that destroys like the depth of the abdominals.
Yeah. There's a reason why Superman has the shorts. It breaks up this big run of blue. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you point this out, because when we get to Cartoonicus's book, we're going to be talking about crotches a little bit during that conversation. Okay. But that's a little teaser out there for y'all in the world. If you're interested in crotch talk, stick around, because this is happening.
Well, costume talk is very important with what's coming up. So anyway, he goes back to Earth 172. Note the issue. So he goes back. This is issue, what is it? 180. I don't know. I can't see it. It's way too tiny. They went way smaller with the numbers on there. But in this issue, this is the Demolition Team, and I love this design. I love this group. This is actually a pretty cool crew. They've never come back. I don't think so. They were used on The Flash, and they didn't dress like this or anything like that. So
yeah,
anyway, they destroy Ferris aircraft, and while they're doing that, Hal gets called away. The Guardians again say, "You're supposed to be doing space stuff. Get out of there!" And they sent him out. They demanded that he leave. He left Ferris aircraft defenseless, and it is destroyed, except for a hangar that has their solar plane, which they kept talking about that solar plane for like 50 issues. I don't know why. I don't know what the big deal was with the solar plane. But anyway, she demands, Carol Ferris demands that he choose between being a Green Lantern and her. And yeah. And he actually decides to go and give up being a Green Lantern. And when the other Lanterns hear this, they confront him. This looks like Watchmen art up in the corner here. The way Hal's face looks, he looks like one of the guys from Watchmen. He looks like Night Owl. Very similar expressions. Anyway.
Imagine that.
Yeah. It's Dave Gibbons. But Kat Matui she rages at him because her origin story, the very first story she ever did, Hal went and convinced her to stay a Green Lantern and give up on marrying the man she loved. He said, anybody can be a wife and a mother. You're a Green Lantern.
Well, that's not true.
It's a Silver Age story. I really couldn't believe that he's, but in the way it's like very feminist. It's like, hey, you should be a Green Lantern, not be a wife and mother. It's like, why could it, like Green Lanterns never got married? That's a very weird thing. And
when you think about it,
it's funny because it's also kind of based too, because it kind of blows up on her, and then she gets mad that she kind of went the feminist route.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then she falls in love with the Green Lantern and then gets killed.
Yep. So, and we're getting to that. We're getting to that. So,
but before we get to that, though, one thing I think is funny about that is it's like, okay, so Hal's statement also doesn't make sense, because the Green Lantern's ability to Green Lantern isn't a physical fitness thing; it's a willpower thing. So there's nothing to say you can't be a mom and a Green Lantern.
And
you probably shouldn't do it while pregnant, though. I think you should probably abstain for the entire term of the child.
Well, though, think about what Alan Scott did, and I don't like Kingdom Come, but you think about what Alan Scott did during Kingdom Come, right? He was patrolling like the entire planet from his like space, fortress, and just like energy constructs everywhere. Like, I mean, if you've got that mom energy of the eyes on the back of your head, you're just like, listen, I said no more of this.
Yep. And I'll remind you that when they get to the Sinestro Corps, there's a member of them who just goes around kidnapping Green Lanterns' babies. So many of them are parents, in fact, married to other Green Lanterns, that they have babies, and it's only if both parents are Green Lanterns that she goes and kidnaps their babies. And yet there's a dozen of them or whatever.
Right. I'm just saying that would be. I could just see the green mommy now out there.
Listen, I'm just thinking it's a disaster bound to happen, at least during the pregnancy, especially because hormones are all over the place.
Yeah.
Okay,
right. I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
Really think about it.
at least taking the last trimester on the down low.
Yeah. So. Anyway, she's mad at him and doesn't forgive him until 198, pretty much. So he goes back. confesses his love to her, that he actually gave up everything. And he went around and talked to all the superheroes and got their opinions of it. And then he goes and resigns, and he gives up being a Green Lantern. And this was the cover. The covers are out of order. I named them Cov, which puts them behind the numbering, I guess. Sorry about that. So then he finds out that John Stewart, his backup, is the new Green Lantern. I don't know why he's so shocked, but yeah, he's the new Green Lantern. And then there's an issue, and I included this just because of the bottom. All of a sudden, for no reason, there is an issue from the Silver Age that is just reprinted that talks about Guy Gardner, the other backup. And it even shows John Stewart on the cover, but it's out the story of Guy Gardner, who's been in a coma for years. And there's a little wink saying, this might be important to know. and in case you're wondering why the heck they did this, I think it's also in between Len and Engelhart. Okay. Yeah. And then Guy Gardner comes out of his coma. That's why you needed to know that. Now he then gets up. Yeah. Then
sorry. Jim in the chat says, "What's the greatest pie face story in Green Lantern?"
Pie face story.
Are you even allowed to acknowledge pie face anymore?
I don't know. I always thought it was progressive that they had a Native American character.
Yeah.
But he's called Pie Face, and some people say it's because of the Eskimo pie, which they can't even call it Eskimo pie anymore.
Yeah, it was just a silly nickname, like all military and paramilitary people used to have. So it was one of those things.
He's Pie Face Kalmaku. Yeah. So anyway, then we get to this story, which there is this character named Predator. The guy on the right here is Predator. By the way, I would point out that DC had a character called the Terminator before Terminator, had a character named Predator before the Predator, and had Karate Kid before the Karate Kid. They could have put out a comic called Karate Kid Fights the Terminator and the Predator.
Missed opportunities.
Missed opportunities, yes. But okay, so they had the Predator, and he's the guy who actually fought the demolition team. He's been hanging around Ferris Aircraft. Hal tracks him down, and he suddenly kidnaps Carol Ferris, and they merge into Star Sapphire. And that's because these are out of order. I showed you that before we got to the thing here. So they merge, and she becomes Star Sapphire permanently. And then there's a whole story that reveals that this is why she's been manipulating him to give up the ring, because she's been playing all feminine and coy while her manly side is the Predator. That's the masculine side, because she's always been a very tough woman raised by a dad who wanted a boy. He wanted a Carl Jr., not a Carol. And so she's always been split and torn. Who knows what they would do with this story today, by the way.
Let's face it.
Oh my God. They would pull a two-spirit thing is what they would do.
Yeah, she is a two-spirit. There's the two-spirit.
I know.
Yeah. Let's be honest. We all want some Carl's Jr. That's just...
No, I was going to say, this is an actual good costume, except maybe the hat. I could lose the hat, take her to leave. But like the rest of the costume, this is a... Well, the problem is the tiara barely looks like a tiara. It just looks like a hat, right?
Yeah.
Because of the way it has to be colored for the rest of the costume. But the rest of the character design, this is a good one, especially having that big belt that breaks up the costume. Though that's less of a problem with women's designs because the hips kind of naturally break it up with their shape. But this is much better than the other one we were seeing.
In the early 200s of Green Lantern, they really revised this costume. This is right around the time that they also took characters like Ocean Master, and they took the classic costume, but they stayed on the same look, but instead of the swimsuit look, she has long leggings and boots, and they kind of fit together, and the color scheme looks better. I don't have those to show you, but that's she doesn't really ditch this look, but every costume is along this lines. It's kind of like
evolves into the same pattern.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a good view of the costume too. And then, so we go on to, now he's checking out. Guy Gardner's checking out. Now he's been in a coma for 7 years. If you know anything about muscle degradation, he should not be checking out and leaving. And they're like, wait a minute, you're up and around? And he says, I've got a date with a ring. So that's what's going on there. And Hal is really dejected because he actually goes back to Oa and throws himself because the crisis on Infinite Earths is happening. And he goes to the Guardians and says, there's a great crisis coming. Use me. I'm willing to help out in any way I can. They're like, we don't need you. And they send him back. And he's like, I begged and degraded myself and they still rejected me. And he's wondering what to do with himself. And he looks at a bar and he's like, no, that's not for me. So not a big drinker back then, but Giffen would change that. Anyway, so he climbs up to Ebenser's grave wanting to talk to his, the previous ring bearer, and finds Guy Gardner digging up the grave. Now, there's not actually, the grave is underneath the mountain. The very first thing Hal ever did with the ring is he lifts up an entire mountain and shoves the spaceship under it and drops the mountain on top of it. And then he puts this little plaque there. There's no 6 feet under, that he's going to find them. But Guy is kind of out of it. He's like, must have ring, must have power. Yeah. So he's digging. He's like, there's no ring. He wasn't buried with a ring. He gave me the ring and I just gave it away. And then they have a big fight. And a Guardian appears and says, we now need you, Guy Gardner. And they grab him. And Hal's like, wait a minute. And he grabs Guy's foot and gets tugged along with them to Oa and has a big misadventure. And he goes in and finds out that what's happening is that there's a whole bunch of the Guardians of the universe who believe that they have been guarding the universe so that now it can end. They've been collecting it all, but of course all things must end and this universe is going to end, and that's what the crisis is. So they're like, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to do anything. This is the end of the universe. That's going to happen. And then there's a splinter cell that grabbed Guy, and then there's just 15 of them, I think, that splintered off from the rest. And they're like, no, we need to take action. And then the Anti-Monitor kills all but one of those Guardians. So there's one left, and he goes to Guy and says, Guy, you're a hot young actor. You're going to be our Guardian. And he gives him a ring, and so
I love you. He sounds like a 1940 huckster.
Also, even if they're technically not wrong, you're still wrong if you're right for the wrong reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
These are signed, by the way. These covers are signed.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Got to meet.
Yeah, because you were saying you had your stack before we started that you went and scanned all of this yourself.
Mm-hmm. And so there he gets they haven't all died yet, but they all die right after he gets this costume. And that is just my favorite costume.
Yeah, I absolutely love Guy's costume. I always have.
Yeah, that's a good costume.
Yeah, I think George Perez designed that.
I 100% stole that costume from one of the first superheroes I created when junior high.
I'm also not surprised that Perez would be the one who designed that. That 100% just looks like straight up his alley.
Yeah. So the stories, by the way, starting with I kind of skipped past the covers here. This one is called 5. This one is called 4. And so
we're
they all
counting
say
down.
Crisis crossover. This one is called 3. And there's I don't know whose art this is. Is it Chaykin, do you think? Howard Chaykin?
Looks like Chaykin.
It says CHK. And I think that's Chaykin. So I don't know why they got Chaykin to do the cover, but it looks pretty awesome.
Looks very, very pulpy. I mean, I like the design.
85. His American what was that? American
he's
Flag
a hot artist at the time.
was really hot then.
Yeah.
So and he was doing art for everyone. Several people, I mean.
Okay. So Guy's mission is that and again, Hal is rejected, but Guy's mission is that he needs to recruit a very powerful special mission force, basically a big suicide squad, to go into the Quardian universe and destroy the moon where the Anti-Monitor was born. He'd do this by hitting a big white spot on the black moon. And the And so he's got to go into the Cordian universe, but first he's got to get a team together. And so he goes and he reanimates the Shark, who is an old Green Lantern villain, not King Shark, but Shark, the highly evolved Shark Man from the future. And then like the Shark Man is like, I want the original Green Lantern, runs off and goes and attacks Hal. So Hal gets caught up with this whole thing anyway, with Guy recruiting all these guys, and he gets Goldface, he gets Sonar, and he tries to get Hector Hammond, who immediately tries to backstab him because Hector Hammond is who he is. And he gets a whole alien crew of misanthropes, and this gigantic army all heads off. So that's what's happening in 197. This is 196. I do not have 197. I don't know if I sold it or what, but I could not find it. And so we end up, they're standing on the moon of Pluto, and Hal has been given a ring. I do not remember what happened in 197 that he gets a ring, but basically he's sent along with Guy, following Guy's orders. And he says, you know what, I'm really glad that you got to be a Lantern finally. And Guy says, jerk, and walks off. It's just Guy's in a lot of, we don't know what's going on with Guy, quite frankly. By the way, Guy found out from...
Do we ever know what's going on with Guy?
Well, Guy goes to the Guardians and they're like, well, we could have reawakened you at any time, but we had no reason to. And he's like, you could have reawakened me. And they're like, why? Why would we do that? So,
I believe that like in JLI after this, they bounce between the idea that he might have been brain damaged. And giving him like his fits of rage are partly because he's got a temper and partly because he's had TBI.
Right.
But also that he's because this is all happening so fast, he's coming out of like a coma and he's not thinking clearly. And
right.
So that and he's also got this need to prove himself because he was the second choice.
And the fact that he was the second choice is, I mean, the first thing he does when he gets the ring, even though he's on a universe-saving mission, he goes back to Baltimore and he destroys a couple of the old buildings there because he says, if I'm going to be saving the entire universe, I don't want to be saving this place. So he's got some pent-up rage, and
that's kind of based.
So Hal is the one who says to the Guardians, he's got brain damage or something. And a lot of people thought that I mean, he's not a doctor. He doesn't know. He just knows that Guy is acting very weird for some reason. Mm-hmm. And if you want to go, I mean, I don't want to get away from the story here, but what Bo Smith introduced along after this was that each time Guy loses his ring, like he loses his Green Lantern ring, he immediately goes out adopting a whole bunch of different identities and trying other powers and things. And then he gets the Sinestro ring. And then he's got that Sinestro ring for a while, and then he loses that, and he goes on this mission to find the whole reason being that he is part Vuldarian. He's this old warrior race. He's always looking for power, and it's like this actually makes sense of everything going back to the beginning. And it's too bad because the first thing Jeff Johns does when he takes over is like, oh, he strip out his whole Vuldarian DNA. Just strip out his DNA. And it's like, his DNA is why he's who he is. It explains why he's got this attitude and why when he gets his Vuldarian powers, the jerk Guy kind of goes down because he's finally happy and satisfied with what he is. That's what he was looking for, Mm-hmm. I mean, it really does make sense, even probably a lot more than Bo Smith intended it to. But anyway, that's so here we are. This thing at the bottom is John Stewart using some very specious means to get to Oa, where he like builds up some rocket power, and rocket power is not going to get you there faster than ring power. But it's a stupid story. Metal and I were talking about that, but so he gets to Oa. He gets to Oa and finds a whole bunch of Green Lanterns there. They've been hopping around in a warp-capable ship and gathered a whole crew together, and they talk with the Guardians.
We should probably mention here too that like during the Crisis on Infinite Earths, the Guardians have secluded themselves away and put a barrier around
Yes.
around the planet Oa, and that cut off all the Green Lanterns' power that were off planet. So,
right.
So,
right.
Which is a real dick move. I would like to point out.
Yeah, the barrier around the planet is a minor subplot for a while that, Kat Matui keeps trying to converse with the Guardians, can't get through. There's a big, at this time, they make a big deal about the fact that if you want to get to Oa, you have to send your energy form, because there's no way to get yourself to Oa without means like going through a whole bunch of very costly a series of warp portals, and or you have to get a warp capable ship or something. Most Guardians they appear on Oa, but they're actually their energy forms, because you can't get to Oa. It's so far away. And that, of course, is completely, you never hear them talking about that anymore. They just, even within this story, they're inconsistent about it, because Hal and Guy are standing here on the moon of Jupiter. Or no, pardon me, the moon of Pluto. Like, Pluto has a moon? I didn't even know it had a moon. But yeah, they're standing on Pluto's moon.
It's named Karen.
And then they go through, they go through the portal, and then aren't they just as far from Quard as the impossible distance to cover from Oa? But they never mention it, and suddenly they're at Quard with no, it's like it wasn't even a problem. It's like it's over there.
Well,
it's like it doesn't make any sense.
I think the idea, well, yeah, I'm not sure. I can't remember what it was now, but it was something like that. I was thinking that they were as far from Quard as Earth was from Karen.
It possibly, I don't know. I thought that
it's
Quard
still
and
a
Oa are in the exact
ridiculous
same
distance.
spot.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, like, okay, so Pluto to Earth is like,
I didn't want to get
like 700 astronomical units. It's a stupid long distance.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna ask the internet about that quick while we're talking. Okay.
But like I say, even within this story, it seems like it's inconsistent whether you can get there or not. So and like I say, this is something that's pretty quickly forgotten about. That you can just go back to Earth from Oa. It's not a problem. So here we go. So the thing is, I got distracted because he started talking. What I started to say was that the Guardians start debating between the one who sent Guy off to destroy the moon, and the reason that John gets to Oa, Sinestro helps him. Sinestro and Kat Matui help him, and then it was all a plot of Sinestro to get pulled along in the wake of John Stewart so that he can get to Oa, and he's going to destroy the dark spot on the white moon of Oa and destroy the whole universe there. And John figures out and captures him, and because the Guardians are like, okay, Sinestro warned you not to have the moon destroyed on Quard, but he's a bad guy, and they debate all this back and forth, and all of a sudden, Tomar Ray, the fish bird guy, who is one of the greatest Green Lanterns, he's one of the honor guard, and he is the oldest friend of Hal Jordan in the Corps. He is the first Green Lantern that Hal Jordan Green Lantern ever met. And so he is his oldest friend in the Corps. All of a sudden, his eyes go wide, and he's like, "It is wrong. You should not destroy the moon." And they're like, "What?" And they're like, "Why are you talking?" He's like, "I am the Lantern. The Lantern is talking to you." So the Great Battery is talking through Tomar Ray about how they must not destroy the moon, because it would actually destroy it would ruin the only connection the Anti-Monitor has to the physical universe, and he would become even more godlike in power. So, which is, I mean, why? Well, I don't know why destroying a moon would do that. And it seems like if that was true, the Anti-Monitor could do that, but he must not know about it. So we go on to this story. So Hal and Guy and all these aliens and Goldface and Sonar and the Shark and who knows who else, they all go through this warp portal and end up in the Quardian universe. And then the weaponers of Quard immediately attack them. Like I say, I don't know if are they at Quard, or is there just weaponers of Cord by that portal in the Cordian universe? I don't know. But they have a huge battle, and then the Green Lanterns that Hal is with arrive. The Green Lanterns arrive. Meanwhile, I didn't include this, but Guy orders Hal to kill some of the weaponers. He's like, stop putting them in a box. You have to kill them. I'm giving you an order. He says, I am not going to do that. I quit. And he says, okay, give me the ring. He says, I will die without the ring. And he says, yeah. And he takes Hal's ring and leaves him to die in space. And Hal grabs the spacesuit of a nearby dead weaponer and uses that to keep alive, even though they don't breathe the same thing. So finally, the good Green Lanterns, the Green Lanterns show up in the Cordian universe. They have a huge war. It's a 3-way war between Guy and his criminals and the Green Lanterns and the weaponers. And Zax of Zaus dies, as you can see. And that's the bug there. And we see Chip and Aricia. And this is Chrisma. And John and Katma are fighting. This guy saves John. So there's another Green Lantern who dies. And meanwhile, when Guy Gardner finds Hal again, that Hal now has a ring, but he does not have a ring. The Guardians the Green Lanterns, all they do is they put a bubble around him so that he can breathe, and they put him on the moon and say, there, just wait there, because you can't do anything. And Guy finds him, thwomps him right in the middle of the white spot that he's about to destroy. And John arrives, and they have a battle of wills. John is triumphant. He's got more willpower than Guy, at least while Guy is in this crazy, unsettled manner. And they emerge victorious. And then off in the Cordian universe elsewhere, the Anti-Monitor finally dies in issue 12 of Crisis, which came out this same month, I think. And so they realize that the whole battle is over, but they have lost several Green Lanterns, and Tomar Ray has been mortally wounded by Goldface. And of course, we all know what's going to happen. I mean, Hal has been needing a ring for all this time, and Tomar Ray says, I need to pass on my ring. And it floats off his hand and arrives in front of John Stewart. He's like, me? I am a Green Lantern. And the ring says, you are wearing Hal Jordan's ring, bitch. I'm sorry, it doesn't say bitch.
It should. But, they want kids to read this.
yeah, I want kids to read this. So
kids
John gets the ring, and Hal gets his ring back. And look at it. It is good. It is finished. He's truly dying the Christ figure death. and Hal, who can barely move after the beating he's taken, just runs to his dying friend. And John Stewart says, well, this isn't official, but I'm sure the Guardians will be okay with this. And they shine the infinity symbol, which just signifies that the Corps goes on forever. Green Lanterns do not, but Green Lantern Corps does. And this is the payoff to 20 issues of him not having a ring, of 50 issues of him being bossed around by the Guardians until he finally gives up being a Green Lantern. And we're all like, is he ever going to come back? And here he comes back. And it's at the cost of Tomar Ray's life. And I just love this story.
I never noticed this before. There's one thing about that, one of the people in the background, right? Like, I was complaining about the Green Lantern outfit in general, and it doesn't look as bad on the women, again, because of the way the waist pinches in kind of like solves some of that breakup of the mass problem. But there's this one costume here of the one woman whose costume is different from everybody else's, and her lantern symbol is basically right over her womb, and it's very weird.
Yeah.
I had not noticed it until you're like, "There's one costume," and I'm like, "It's the womb costume. That's the one."
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, the one behind the squirrel Chip is also a variant.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
but like that
that
one doesn't have limbs.
Very, very distinctly different from like all the other women costumes and stuff here too. And it's like, also, it's right on her womb. And I want to know whose design decision was. Yeah, if she has one, but still, like, I want to know whose design decision was that.
Probably the same person who put the Superman symbol right on Supergirl's crotch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's Charisma. She's one of the other honor guards alongside Tomar Ray and what's his name?
Charisma?
What? Charisma. Yeah. It's yes. Her name is Charisma. Yeah. They would just call her Rhys now.
Yeah.
I'm sold.
That's it. That's my favorite story. Green Lantern 198. It just because if you read it, it's it's an interesting story on its own, but taken with all that it means, all the payoff of what Green Lantern has been through for 3+ years, it's amazing.
It also has all the cool parts of like a superhero crossover issue without having to go outside of the actual title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed reading it. I hadn't read it before today, as mentioned at the beginning of the show. I had not read it before today, but I did really enjoy that. I mean, I was familiar enough with Green Lantern stories after this that I knew most of the characters that were involved, and so that was pretty cool. I do kind of wish that it was the last Hal Jordan story, though. I'll be completely honest. I am one of those people. I think Hal Jordan should have stayed not the Green Lantern, and I know it wouldn't. It would be several years before we got. Oh my goodness, I can't remember his name right now. That's really embarrassing.
Kyle Rayner.
Yes, Kyle. Yeah. I love Kyle.
Yeah, this is the easiest superhero to replace. I mean, if anything, Hal Jordan giving up his ring, I think it hurts so much because he gives up his ring for the woman he loves, and she immediately goes, "I'm evil," and departs.
Yeah.
But from here, Hal Jordan he dates a 14-year-old, and then
I mean, at this point, she's not 14 anymore.
No, she's 14. She ages herself.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
She uses the ring to age herself.
Yeah,
but she's I'm 14, but now I'm adult and hot. And it's like, okay.
Yeah,
and it's like,
really weird.
No, you were right to say no. Yeah.
This is, to answer Fizz's question, this is Green Lantern 198.
198,
198. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where like, and there are some fun stories, but I mean, I really like Guy. I really like John Stewart. I think there would have been plenty of material in there and just left Hal to, mourn his friend, reconnect with his girl, whatever, right? If they wanted to bring it around and just wrap up his career, I thought that would have been a good move to kind of move past that. Because I don't know, I really, and I understand that like a lot of people really hate the whole Emerald Twilight piece, and I understand how that's a bummer to folks. But at the same time, like the stories that came after that and the Kyle stories were just so good that you got to move on, man.
The problem is Emerald Twilight was so badly done. I mean, it's just a heel turn in one panel where he's just, "You're not gonna like me when I get there," and then he's evil. He's cutting his friend's hands off, and it's like, what does that? That doesn't make any sense. And it would have been. It'd been the perfect thing if they had planned it. If they had planned it instead of saying it with issue 47, it's like, okay, Coast City's gone. Oh man. And then 48, he just is mourning and weird. It's like if they had planned this out better and had him do something where he just goes out in a blaze of glory and gives up his ring and gives it to someone new. And for all the complaining we have of all the, the needless, it's like I have nothing against characters being of other races. It's just so forced, but his is the perfect thing to give it to anybody. I wouldn't have cared if they gave it to a woman and that was who the Green Lantern was, or it could have been anybody. Instead, they went with another white guy
based on will, so you don't even
Yeah.
care about like biology or anything. You give it to an octopus person, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, as long as they're from Sector 2814.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think that Hal, they kind of had a renaissance a little bit when they really played up the whole thing with him, like being. I think what happened was what was that one that they did with that story that was set in the 60s that was kind of recapturing the spirit of the Silver Age and New Frontier. New Frontier. Really
Darwin
playing
Cook's
up the
New
whole
Frontier.
How every kid in the world loved Chuck Yeager, and he's and that's what Hal's job is. And it's like that, for a while that was cool, but it's like I really hate the test pilot job because he can either bring the plane in or he can go, oh, it's crashing. And then, it's like, I've seen how many planes crashes. His job is really kind of boring. The plane either makes it back or it crashes and explodes. And it's like, and then he walks out of the desert each time. And it's like, big deal. I'm so tired of Hal Jordan and his job, and they brought him back, and it's like, he's really a character that could have been dead. We just hated the way that they killed him off.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't even hate the way they killed him off in the big picture, because I wasn't a huge Hal Jordan fan, but I really like Hal Jordan as the Spectre. Right? So like, I wasn't a big fan of the parallax thing. I thought that was kind of stupid, but man, when he dies to reignite the sun and he gets his turn to the Spectre, I really liked those stories. I thought that was a great idea. And I'm like, man, we just could have just left it there.
Well, I'll even take it further about the job. I don't think any Green Lantern needs a job unless they already have dependents. Like, of all superheroes, it's one of those ones that makes no sense why Green Lantern needs to continue his everyday life.
Yeah.
Well, unless the point of the everyday life is to stay close to the girl.
Yeah, I mean, you could have a reason, but like, especially a lot of them start before it matters with the girl. Like, there's no reason to just continue doing your job, right? Like, you could just make a house if you needed one out in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't matter. You've got like all this power at your disposal. You could just go and do your space cop thing.
That's true.
And that is what the Exile story was about. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what they want you to do anyway, right? Is they want you to do your space cop thing. They don't want you staying on the planet you're from or anything.
Joining the Justice League.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. Before we get on to the next book, just general Green Lantern stuff, because I'd be really interested in your take on this specifically, Hutch. I am very, very critical of a lot of Jeff Johns' additions to the lore. Bringing Hal back is one of them. But and the whole like emotional spectrum I always thought was a little silly, but for reasons that have to do with knowing what words mean and things. But beyond that, I do kind of find some appeal to what they did with the Zamarons, what he did with the Star Sapphires. What is your take? What do you think about that the whole lanterns of many colors thing?
First of all, the Zamarons are the mates of the Guardians. And I liked what happened. I didn't go as far as issue 200, but in issue 200, the Zamarons come to the planet of Oa and they announce, we're going off to have children. And that's why they leave. And they leave the GLs to patrol themselves. There's no more Guardians except for like one who stayed behind.
The incel of the Guardians.
I liked that. I didn't really like what they've done with the Zamoran since then, because he kind of just, there's a lot of stuff he's invalidated to make do his spin on stuff. I don't like his take on Hal Jordan. I don't like his Hal's just a one night stand guy who couldn't ever get married. And it's like, I grew up with the guy who, he's a pretty moral character, wouldn't kill even in a war and things like that. And that's what made Guy stand out. He kills people all the time. And then when Jeff Johns had this big thing where the Guardians rings were, or the GL's rings were suddenly authorized to kill, and Guy has never killed anybody. And I'm like, that's a complete you haven't read, sir. You haven't read. It's like you didn't read Invasion. You didn't. There's a whole thing right in after issue 200. He's exiled off to the planet Maltus, and it gets invaded. And Guy goes up and goes blam 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 and just wrecks all the ships. And
even in a Mosaic, Green Lantern Mosaic, I'm pretty sure there were times that Stewart killed people on Mosaic to keep the peace.
I didn't read all the issues, but
it's been a long time since I read them. But I'm pretty sure there's at least one or two cases where lethal force was used on Mosaic. I
think that Jeff is just setting up a whole new. This is my version of the GL universe, obviously, and it doesn't comply with a lot of the old stuff. It doesn't mesh with it. I liked the old stuff better. I like some of the new tone, but I mean, you get to the eyeballs of all your loved ones raining on you while you're on the planet Oa, and it's never explained why. There's a lot of stuff that just sent me going, I don't want to read this anymore. I left right after Blackest Night. I didn't read GL anymore, so I don't know what happened in the Whitest Day or Brightest Day. I didn't read any of that stuff. I was done with DC right then. But but I know there's a lot that's happened with the Spectrum stuff since then. But it's like this is kind of a cool idea, but it's a problem that willpower is not an emotion.
Yes.
And that really brought down the movie was all the stuff that's Jeff Johns stuff, all the stuff that's in there that's Jeff Johns ideas. It's like he's a space cop. Go with that. You don't. He's going into all the crap about the emotional spectrum, and I'm like, just leave that out of there. There's one other thing before we move on. There's one other thing I wanted to cover that I skipped. Remember how he talked about the exile, where Hal is exiled from Earth for 2 years of our time, basically, and that is why Hal Jordan is not available to protect Earth when the Martians attack and destroy the Justice League satellite, and Vibe becomes a member of the Justice League in Detroit. That's why, because Green Lantern's gone, the Flash is in a murder trial, and all the other Leaguers are unavailable. So that's why, by the way, if you ever buy Justice League Annual #1, suddenly John Stewart has a ring for no reason because it was written to use Hal Jordan and he was not available. And they hey, look, substitute GL is here for no explained reason. So that's why he's gone, is that he's in space. And notice when he's exiled from Earth is almost destroyed by Martians. It's almost conquered and destroyed by Martians because Hal Jordan is not on Earth.
Well, and that's one of the interesting things here's one of the interesting things about that premise too, is that there's backup Green Lanterns, but Orissa is also from 2814, right? So
Orissa,
yeah.
No, she's
isn't it mentioned on this one that in that one earlier that when they're first introduced that she's also from 2814? Let me look again here. I was sure that I read that.
I don't believe so. She's from Graxos, and I don't know where it's from, which sector, but I believe she's in a different sector because they didn't have 2 to a sector back in those days. And the funny thing about Jeff Johns,
I read that in the thing today, but let me. Anyway,
the funny thing about Jeff Johns' ideas is that when the media guys do the animated version of Green Lantern, I actually like the Red Lanterns, but the way that Jeff Johns conceived them, where they're spitting out vomiting blood all the time, and they're they're just kind of crazy
blood is like
and murderous.
Molten magma.
Yeah, it's like ugh. But the animated series is
okay.
They're doing a pretty good job. The computerized the computer animated GL series, it's pretty good. It's like it's using a lot of Jeff Johns' ideas, but kind of doing it better. So I like those.
Well, that would make sense because that was broadcast on TV, so you've got to edit it, and vomiting blood doesn't make it past the censors.
Yeah.
So
I wasn't super into it, but I did like that show more than most random Green Lantern comics ever. Because every time I read one, it's taking place on or around Earth. which I think is like the most boring thing you can do with Green Lantern because he's supposed to be space cop. But the show spent like so much time actually being space cop.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my mistake.
2815. Yeah.
Yeah, 15. It's one sector over.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my mistake there. Oh, my faulty memory.
I love 198 so much, and so much of what happens from issue 200 onward is great with the Green Lanterns coming to Earth as a group, and I love a lot of those stories. The Englehart and Staten run is just wonderful. If anybody out there is looking for something to read, the Green Lantern Corps stories from 200 to the end of that run are really overall really great, and I just love how Chip, the guy in the center there. He started out as just an animal guy. He gets more and more cartoony every time you see him, and until finally he's like showing his backstory, and it just looks like a Disney cartoon.
Yep.
And in fact his best friend is named Dale. He's Chip. His best friend is Dale. D''LL. And his enemy, his mortal enemy, is Dr. Ubix, who's named after Ub Iwerks. So.
And his job is basically a rescue ranger.
Well, I want to address it.
I said, and his job is basically a rescue ranger in space.
This is also true. Before the rescue rangers were a thing.
Yeah.
Jim Tuner says we need a Chip and Rocket Raccoon crossover. There are a couple of things I want to address in the chat. First, Jim says earlier that Hal Jordan's ideal role was as an emotional punching bag for Green Arrow. I will take that as a joke. Fizz says, I don't like how the lanterns of many colors completely phase out all of the old Green Lantern villains. Which I agree. That was one thing that like I said, I have not religiously followed the book since Hal Jordan's return, just because it irritated me. But it does seem that every one of their villains seems to just be some variation on the Green Lanterns themselves, in one way or another. The classic Silver Age villains don't show up. We were talking in the chat earlier about how the Tattooed Man and the Shark. I suggested the Tattooed Man, and the Shark seem like they might be Aquaman villains, but they're not. And I think they work really well as Green Lantern villains, but it's interesting that they never had, taking place in the same universe. You think there'd be more crossover between those guys specifically. And Fizz also has a question. Says, I have a question for the panel. Were all the old Green Lantern's villains ill-suited for Green Lantern? What do we think? Silver Age Green Lantern villains ill-suited to Green Lantern. Oh. Hutch just disappeared.
I'm trying to
what do you
remember
think, Metal?
A lot of them too, but like the ones that I remember, no, I think they were fine. I don't think they're ill-suited. Especially like the idea of space cop. Honestly means that you could throw anything at the wall, and inner astral sheriff here is going to have to bring peace. Like, I don't know. I think most of the villains I remember seeing were just perfectly fine for Green Lantern. I don't know why they decided to basically go like a Superman-esque route and turn all of the villains into dark versions of Kryptonians or whatever, right? It's just all going to be other things like Lantern instead of just having off-the-wall stuff.
I think that was a mistake for Superman too, but I'm
insulting both of them in that regard.
Right. But to the point of Green Lantern, I mean, like when you've got, in fact, let me just go ahead and flash up to the top of the other screen here. Give me a second, because there's a bunch on the cover, right? So you've got, in this group of villains, you've got space villains, you've got aliens, you've got Goldface, who is a mob boss basically character. You've got Sonar, who is trying to take over his home nation using sound waves. You've got the Shark, who's just a mutant beast, right? And these are all a random spattering of things that a space cop might run into.
I just want intergalactic criminals. That's what I would want Green Lantern to fight.
and some of them are,
Yeah.
and some of them are earthbound, like Shark, like the Tattooed Man, right? Hector Hammond, Jim Tooner mentions Hector Hammond, who of course is in that, getting close to cosmic level powers. Ooh, and Dr. Polaris, great Green Lantern villain.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you've got this idea of elemental forces. You've got the idea of the cosmic idea, and I think that being a space cop, you're going to run into all sorts. And I think that they formerly had done a pretty good job of that. So
I forgot to point out that Sonar fights in space with his sound gun. He's like shooting guys with his sound gun in space, and
okay, right, that doesn't make any sense. I hadn't picked up on that when we were watching.
There are enough particles in space that sound waves can travel, but it's so not dense that it's so not dense that like a nuclear explosion would sound like a whisper, right? Like, how powerful would your gun have to be to do anything in space?
Ooh, Jim Tooner also points out the original Dr. Light. Now that's the guy who made the rounds in the Silver Age DC universe, man. Everybody fought Dr. Light. But that was a good person to person, a real good match for Hal.
But like I would want things like, I don't know, the equivalent of maybe like every type of criminal we have on Earth. I would want there to be some type of like intergalactic or whatever version of that too. Like maybe instead of some like drug trade, there's some like weird space crystal trade or whatever underground market. Like you want all that kind of stuff, which should give you a large variety of villains to work with.
Yeah. Well, and then you're going to combine local threats, and that was one thing I reviewed a couple months ago. Cartoonix and I did a stream where I was reviewing books, and one of the ones I did was the Far Sector book, which, like, the basic premise of it was not terrible. There was a bunch of stuff in it that didn't make any sense, and the whole was less than the sum of its parts, but some of those parts were really good. It was a procedural, murder mystery set on an alien world, right? Like, you picture like that, and you're like, dude, I want to read that. It's a perfect Green Lantern story. And it could have been. It wasn't, but it could have been. Oh, man. Hutch disappeared again.
Oh, yeah, he's probably going to end up coming and going.
Right, got some communication problems. Well, anyway.
Save the galaxy.
What?
He has to go save the galaxy.
He's got to go save the galaxy.
Yeah. It's okay. I'll let him in whenever he comes back in.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on from talking about Hutch's book, and let's go ahead and talk about the one I picked out, which was Green Lantern Corps, number 1, issue number 1, Green Lantern Corps Quarterly. And the reason that I picked that one was because this one of my favorite, like, I love genre crossing things. I love things that don't fit cleanly into boxes. That's like my thing. And so when I saw this back in the day, I was like, it's a Green Lantern story that's also super violent. I'm all about that. I love dusters, so there you have that. I thought the costume design for Jack Chance is amazing, and it's written by John Ostrander, and it's a little bit pastiche of the grim and gritty stories, the hyperviolence stuff, as well as fitting those qualifications for a Green Lantern space cop story.
Yeah, and, we also have Alan Scott, so we know it's going to be off the wall anyway.
Yeah. The Alan Scott story is not one we're going to talk about today. So we're just going to talk about the Jack T. Chance story.
Yeah, but just like if you see these characters on the cover, every story in there is just going to be crazy.
Oh yeah, and I one of the Green Lantern Corps Quarterly was a great anthology title, because you'd have any kind of story that you could imagine. There'd be the space cop stories, there'd be the comedy stories, there'd be the all that stuff. It was some of them had serious. There was one vampire survival story with art by Tony Harris that is just like gorgeous. So but yeah, it was a great title. I really liked it. It was something that only the 90s could bring you off the newsstand. So
I'll actually say this. I think Green Lantern would be better if it was just an anthology series. Like, maybe we follow the Earth Green Lantern more often than not, but it would be cool if we were just also jumping around and seeing what's going on with the other lanterns all the time.
Yeah, the frustrating thing is every time they've tried to do something like that, they haven't been able to like stick to it. They'll be like, "Oh no, we got to tell this epic story with this person over here." It's like DC for the last 20 years has been unable to just tell like short, self-contained stories.
But you know why? It's because before long they're going to find themselves facing another event comics, and they've got to fit everybody in there.
Oh my goodness, I'd never noticed this, but his gun has Greenpeace written on it, PICE.
Yeah, but like, because you could do so many things where you have like the different type of lawman stories too. Like you'd have your space westerns, you could have your space like noir, and all that, and you could just have it as like an anthology series.
Yeah,
it's like such wasted potential on the series.
Yeah, well, this was back in the newsstand days, and this prospect worked for 4 or 5 years. I think Green Lantern Quarterly ran. There were big, thick, chunky 80-page books every 3 months, and the framing sequence talks about the Book of Oa. So they set up this thing so you can go through and tell stories throughout the thing from Green Lanterns from any time period. And so we tell the story of Jack Chance. So this sets up that there is a planet called Garnet that everyone just calls Hellhole because it's a planet full of nothing but criminals. And so they haven't had a Green Lantern, and so this fish man gets sent to go be Green Lantern of this sector, and he goes to Hellhole to try to make, I guess, more of a sea slug guy. Anyway, he goes to Hellhole to try to bring the law and order for the few citizens who aren't criminals, and he instantly gets killed by this three-eyed dude that only shoots golden bullets. And this guy didn't see it coming. So the Ring gets sent out. And also, this is a pretty graphic story if you didn't catch me talking about that earlier. For those of you watching at home who might not want to see people's heads blown off, just look away. So the Ring ends up finding Jack Chance getting ready to go into some sort of bar, Eric Von Zipper's Emporium. And the Ring talks to him, explains the whole thing, gives him a costume, mucho texto, and I go through it right quick. And Jack says, "No costumes for me, so I'll take a badge." And then he decides to go to the Mongols' Den of Iniquity and just vaporize all the bad criminals that are there. Here's the Den of Iniquity, one giant explosion, and there's Jack.
I also really love this art. Like it's extremely fun and expressive for the era.
Let me take a look at if I could see who did the art on this story. It actually might be Harris on this one too. Now thinking about it, looking at it, let's see. Oh, Flint Henry. So I don't know anything about Flint Henry, but he's did the pencils and inks for this one.
Well, he did a good job.
I appreciate that, Mr. Henry. So I was thinking maybe Harris because of the way the guy's using the line work, but if you see, especially in this panel here, looks a lot like the way Harris's line work in Starman looked. But anyway, moving on. So basically, Jack Chance just runs roughshod through the town, just taking on all sorts of criminals and popping people's heads off. So when Hutch was saying that now Guy can use lethal force when no one's been able to use lethal force before, I'm like, dude, Green Lantern Quarterly #1, obviously that Mr. Johns did not read this amazing comic. Also take some time to read the Jack Chance's custom Green Lantern oath. "You know men are wicked, evil, and mean. I'm the nastiest creep you've ever seen. Come one, come all, and put up a fight. I'll pound your butts with Green Lantern's light. Yowza."
This feels like what would happen if Lobo was made into a Green Lantern.
Very much so. It's got that same kind of Lobo humor. Also, this is a pretty awesome. This gal is firing a rocket at a Jack, and it's just one of these cartoon trumpets right back at her.
Holy crap! It's straight out of the Grinch.
Just right out of Looney Tunes right there. So then Jack faces the guy with the golden bullets, and I love the blood spatter and the flies in the background of this. The guy with the golden bullets, and Jack gets hit and decides, what is he going to do? He's going to pull out his own just regular gun and just blow the guy away with a pistol. Which causes the Green Lantern
and cartoon at the same time, which is a very difficult line to straddle.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I think this does so well is, I mean, and you really can buy the gore. It's the same kind of, you get that with Hitman, right? With Garth Ennis and Hitman, that kind of being able to be funny and graphic at the same time. It's the same thing with
enough blood.
Just enough. Well, and I mean, even sometimes the blood being super over the top can be still used for laughs. I mean, that's what Evil Dead does, right? Evil Dead 2 and the Evil Dead TV series, Ash versus Evil Dead, are that same kind of thing where the gore becomes the comedy. Anyway, so the Jack is pulled away and taken to Oa, and the Guardians are like, you can't be like that. That's not how Green Lanterns are supposed to be.
Look at the Guardians. Look at how they're drawn. They're they're drunk and angry.
So Jack says, fine, I'm not interested in your fancy pants way of doing things, but if you ever want anyone to bring order to Hellhole, you got to do it my way, or you can't do it at all. And they so they have this little talk, and they're like, oh man, he's not wrong, and okay, we'll send him back. I guess.
Yeah, this is exactly what I want from a Green Lantern comic. Like, I want different types of lawman for different situations, and he is the perfect type of person for this crime infested dirt hole that he lives in.
Right. Well, and the other thing it talks about, so somebody in one of the panels I skip past, say, so why would you even do this? You're not a nice person. Why would you stand for law and order? He said, well, I like fighting and I like winning, and it's much better to fight people that are going to put up a fight, and good citizens don't want to fight. So I'd much rather fight bad guys because they at least want to fight.
Yeah. It's like the ethical fighter. It's like, I want to fight. I just want to fight people who want to fight.
I want to fight people that have it coming.
Got a point.
Which means he's anti-victim, so.
Yeah.
I want to kill the
I could
killers.
respect this guy.
Yeah. Jack Chance and this guy was my favorite Green Lantern, before Kyle Rayner. I mean, I like Kyle Rayner, in an exception to this, but this guy, Chance was created before Emerald Twilight. So I came across this, I was 14, 15, something like that. I was like, yeah, this guy is pretty awesome. So that was mine. Did anybody else read? I know Hutch has read this one in the past, but I don't know what your take on this might be.
I really liked it, but he did seem kind of like a Lobo rehash just a little bit. Everybody after this was like, oh, let's see Jack T. Chance take on Lobo. Let's see Jack and Lobo. Come on, let's see them get together. And and that didn't happen. And then I think the next time you see him, Hal is disparaging him in space on his way to Oa, and he's like, "You have a gun? What the hell?" And it's like, he treats him like he's a lame-o. And that's another reason for you to not like Emerald Twilight. It's terrible.
Yeah. That's fair. Well, and the thing about it is Jack definitely should have given Hal more of a fight, if for nothing the reason that he thinks so outside of the box. And I do think that was one of the things. We do see there are in Green Lantern Quarterly, I think there are 3 Jack stories that make their way through the course before Emerald Twilight pops up. So that's a factor.
Jim asked a question in the chat there.
I want to go, but I wanted the opinion of Twitless on Green Lantern, Green Arrow 89, even if he isn't here. I wish I could help you.
Yeah. But we can't fish that out for you.
I guess maybe we'll have to try to remember. It's I think that is the issue where John Stewart is introduced, and there was that guy who says, you're so busy being a space cop. What about the problems here? You're so busy listening to the blue man, you won't take care of the black man. I think that's the one.
I have a feeling he'd call that cringe.
Yeah, Twitless has been ill, and so that's part of. I don't hope he doesn't mind me saying so, but he's had a really rough go over the last few weeks. So,
he's getting better.
Keep him in your prayers.
Yeah, definitely. It's that I don't ever. I mean, I've known him for several years over the internet, but he's never been this sick the whole time I've known him. So,
Jim says no. It's the crucifixion cover.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
well, I don't. Well, we'll have to put a pin in that maybe and ask him when he's feeling well. I haven't read that one myself, so. But anyway, yeah. So that was that one. I really so thanks for stopping in there, Jim, and we will see if we can't remember next time. Cartoonicus wrote in the chat, the Emerald Twilight sounds like a My Little Pony character, and you are correct, 100% correct on that one. So,
and I mean, also speak of this, I mean, this guy's cool. I wouldn't want anyone to go out of their way to make him fight Lobo, because that just doesn't sound as interesting as like two of the same characters butting heads. Just really,
sitcom.
Yeah. But I'm also not against it because logically, the dirt hole that he lives in is also the type of place that Lobo might stop. So like, you could just make it work for a single issue.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing about Lobo is like the anti-Superman.
Yeah.
Right. But the Jack is not the anti-Green Lantern. He's the Green Lantern for his time and place. He actually fits into the ethos of the Green Lantern for his time and place. And so that's one of the things that it's like they seem like they're really the kind of would gel, but I don't know that they would. I have the if I was to write, actually, here's a story. If Lobo, and I'm talking like pre-New 52 Lobo, by the way. So if Lobo shows up there on Hellhole and starts to try some trouble, I can definitely see Jack just picking him up and throwing him off the planet, and then they could have a part of a whole story showing up in space, and maybe Lobo is actually there for some slight, because occasionally he accidentally ends up in a noble purpose, and you could actually have a pretty good buddy cop story out in space somewhere. What?
Can Lobo survive in space?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Lobo's got all
rides
the powers
a
of
motorcycle
Superman
out there in space. Doesn't need to breathe or anything.
Yeah.
It's very regenerative too. So.
As the last Zarnian, he has all the powers of Superman plus like 3.
Yeah.
I don't think he has.
You could squish him into a puddle, and he could regenerate from being a puddle of his own goop. Like he's pretty ridiculous. But what would be cooler?
He doesn't have the vision.
I would like to see this character in like a Green Lantern Good, the Bad, and the Ugly type story. Like I think that would be a better suit.
Ooh. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, anyway, that was my favorite Green Lantern story. Cartoonicus, I guess you're the last one.
Alrighty. So let me get it up here.
This is actually kind of my second favorite while you're getting it up. I also really, really like, it's not really a Green Lantern story per se, but the Tangent Comics Green Lantern, Dan Jurgens' little project out there, I really, really like. It does a whole like House of Mystery, Tales from the Crypt kind of anthology story where the Green Lantern is a woman who is the host of this anthology of this thing, where they're like supernatural stories of thrilling stuff, and I really enjoyed those two books, especially the first one. But it's not quite a Green Lantern story.
Anyway, I went simple with this one. I chose Green Lantern's origin story.
Oh, that's not the one I thought you were chosen.
Oh no, not that one. This one.
Oh, you played a joke on me. I was like, that's not the one I read.
This is classic Cartoonicus.
I was like, dude, I spent 45 minutes reading this comic book.
Oh gosh.
Well, I'm ill prepared.
Sorry about that. This is called Just Imagine. Basically, DC went to Stan Lee himself and said, what would have happened if you had been responsible for creating all these famous DC characters? And what would that look like? And he wrote a series of books, all origin stories. I think he did 5 of them. There was Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, and Green Lantern. I don't know if there was any others. And he put his own spin on it.
I will say one of the fun things as far as a parallel in tonight's show is that the pencil art for the series is done by Dave Gibbons, who also did the art, or much of the art that we were looking at from Hutch's stuff. So yep. that's a fun little tie-in there.
It's a nice through line.
Now, here's the thing about this comic is I discovered it from watching a Linkara video originally, and in preparing for this show, I was reading back over it.
Was it atop the fourth wall?
Yeah, atop the fourth wall. So I'm preparing it for this show by reading it over again, and I think to myself, gosh, I really don't think it's actually very good. So you may be wondering why on earth I'm choosing it for my favorite Green Lantern comic. And the answer is because this is, in fact, officially the only Green Lantern comic I have ever read at this point. But it's interesting enough an idea.
That, right? It's like your de facto favorite.
But it's an interesting enough idea that I figured it deserved to be on the show. Okay, so we start out not with a crashed alien spaceship and a test pilot finding him, but over-the-top supervillain introduction you have ever seen with this classic faceless wizardly character, you know, ready to kill his own minions if they fail him even once, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. And to be specific, this is the funniest thing about this like arch wizard character in this is that he specifically and repeatedly refers to himself as just a pastor.
That's right.
And I'm like, what kind of church are you part of? It's like, I mean, like legitimately, like, what are you even on about, man? And there's like earlier, there's somebody that's like, oh, like the parishioners are here for the Wednesday service, and the wizard dude is like, we'll have to cancel the service. I'm just not in the mood. And I'm just like, who's showing up to this dude's church?
Yeah. I mean, look, we see this, image that looks like a classic, nice family on Sunday walking into church. Hey, in fact, I just noticed he's known as the Reverend, but of course his name is Dominic Dark, 2 R's, right? Gee, think this guy is the bad guy?
Well, it's very typical Stanley, right on the nose.
Yes, it is. So Professor Lewis is
it's Len Lewis. It's got that Stanley alliteration for the names, yes, and that it's actually there was a lot of charm, I thought, in a lot of the way this was put together. But I'm sorry, I keep interrupting.
No, it's fine.
I really enjoyed this book for the most part. But
oh, okay, well, good one of us did.
Yeah. I'm not going to say it was awesome, but it was fun.
So yeah, Lewis is the kind of college professor who's teaching history and pointing out, how little we don't, actually know compared to what we don't know. And, he totally believes in the possibility of aliens or ancient civilizations that were much greater than us who could have, been behind all this mythology and everything, right? And we've got this student of his, who's clearly enthralled with all of it. Meanwhile, so here's the deal. People often argue over which characters Stan Lee did and didn't create, and what he was actually part of and all right. One thing I have learned to go with is a telltale sign of Lee's writing is he never does his research. Case in point, a workforce in Africa. Because as we know, Africa is just one little place on the map, Everywhere in Africa is exactly the same. Egypt, Madagascar, South Africa, they're basically the same place, right?
Well, and this is one of the things that I want to actually point out is there is stuff in this book. Like there are these little narration notes, and you don't get narration notes very often anymore.
Yes,
but there are some narration notes that are
his narration notes
100%. Like Stan Lee, like in the opening scene, a church like any other church, or so it seems.
Right. He loves to advertise with his.
Yeah, a university like any other university, not so unusual, but we have to start somewhere.
Right. Don't you believe it?
So yeah. A boss like in any other boss, but don't you believe it, right? And it's just it's all through there, and they're just, it's just great. I love it. It was so much fun, just even seeing that that break the fourth wall, just to make sure that you're being entertained.
Yeah.
Right.
So we've got these guys who are tearing up Africa. And, these guys are just like the most twirly mustache villains. They're just, right on the nose, plowing through the entire place. Here, let me just shoot a hippo for no reason. And when the police show up to try to, stop them, they just easily blow them away without a thought.
Don't need a reason to shoot a hippo. Those things are violent creatures.
Oh! But seriously, this is like, hey, you need to come with us. And they're just like, nah, there's nothing. I'm sure there's absolutely nothing that will, go wrong if we just blow away 2 police officers here. Right. Meanwhile, Lewis himself is planning a trip to Africa. You can't see, but I'm doing
Is that the Kabbalah just randomly in this story?
Yes. It's actually not random. It's actually a significant part of the story.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And this is actually one of the aspects. He says he's
like, is Lee's Jewishness just coming out again for no reason, or
no? This is I am seeking the most important archaeological find of all, the one that unites all other legends, the Tree of Life.
Okay, so he's actually seeking the Sephiroth, though. Okay.
Yeah. So he's looking for the Tree of Life, and he's looking. He said it's there in Genesis. It's there. It's Yggdrasil to the Danes in Mayan legends, and in the Kabbalah, Abdul-Aha calls it the covenant between God and man. So he's specifically seeking the Tree of Life. That's the MacGuffin.
Okay.
And of course, his student is seemingly enthralled by him, but it turns out she's clearly got some kind of agenda. She is keeping an eye on him for someone we don't know. I think we can all assume. But yes, apparently, right in the middle of Africa is Yggdrasil, the ancient Norse myth of the tree that connects the universe.
Why wouldn't it be there? Like, of all places on Earth, why wouldn't it be there?
doesn't do his research. That's why.
No, I'm like, why wouldn't it be there of all places?
Yeah.
It's basically a natural garden.
I know. I just find it so weird that he's crossing, such different cultures like this.
Well, and one of the things he called, the reason that has in this, why they're going to Africa to look for the Tree of Life, was that the idea that Lee is going for is that all of the old stories, all of the legends have one point of origin.
He's trying to merge everything together.
It's the idea that it's this, and this came out when the Out of Africa thesis was first getting a lot of steam on it. And
Yeah, that's why it makes sense to me. Like, this doesn't bother me at all. It makes sense. If it was going to be anywhere at the time this was written, it would be there.
Yeah. So the idea is that since everything's got some starting point, then they're going with that out of Africa idea.
So yeah, these guys are clearly looking for Yggdrasil themselves. Go figure. And I'm going to just jump ahead a little bit because along come Lewis and his student, and they get in the way, and these guys say, well, you're witnesses, and they blow them away. And Lewis falls into the swamp, connected to Yggdrasil, right? And the guys take off, and Yggdrasil decides his sacrifice was noble enough, right? And he's going to basically imbue its power into him. It has, it can't keep doing what it's doing if it's just rooted to the ground forever. So it needs a body to walk around in. And so instead, it decides, right. And basically it tells him, mankind is destroying Earth. It's going to destroy himself. You alone have to put a stop to this. You're going to be my secret agent, basically, to stop man's destruction of nature. This is the point at which Linkara said, gee, this Captain Planet reboot is actually pretty good.
Yeah. So here I want to point out something. Fizz says Africa is a continent, not a country. Imagine saying a workplace in Europe.
Oh yeah, you could totally say that. I have no problem with
that. I don't either, but he's not wrong either.
Not,
we can just say like a workplace on Earth. I'm fine with that too.
Not Serengeti National Park, Tanzania.
Right.
But yeah, and that's basically the big gist of this, right? Is he's like I said, he's going Green Man here.
So go to the next page on here. I guess it's not the next one. It's the one after this one.
Okay,
here we go. This is important.
Green Lantern is Silver Surfer.
Green Lantern, and the beauty is, so he's one part Swamp Thing, and he's actually named Len after the creator of Swamp Thing. I don't know if that was intentional, but that's the case. It's Len. He's one part Swamp Thing. He's one part Captain Planet, and he's also a little bit Green Lantern. And his power sets kind of fall into that. So he's
kind of. When did this come out?
96, I think.
96. Because he also kind of has like this Dr. Manhattan vibe going on here.
Well, and Gibbons
but like
is the artist.
Yeah. So he's got this sort of like religious Dr. Manhattan. So it's like instead of being like this embodiment of science, it's like this embodiment of all spirituality.
Right, absolutely. Well, and also, I would also like to point out that his powers also include a conveniently placed crotch shadow.
Yeah.
And there's inexplicably a crotch shadow everywhere.
I think he has Barbie anatomy, but
yeah. So that's pretty impressive, especially some of the later shots. The one thing I want to take the time to point out here too, Fizz says I only like Stan Lee's take on Aquaman. I've not read it. I may after this. But anyway, one of the things is that like there's this weird energy between the professor and the student. Like throughout the thing, he keeps saying, he's like, "Hey, I noticed you're in class there, Blondie, and oh, I hope you don't mind. I booked a seat next to you for this flight to Africa." And he's like, "Well, why would I mind? You're gorgeous, baby." Like, it's just like stuff that was like not necessarily seem weird like in 1960s comics, but definitely felt a little weird.
Yeah.
Even in the 90s.
This is just Stan though. That's all it is. It's just Stan.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
In his head, that's the way things still worked up until the day that he died.
Probably.
Yeah.
So anyway, on with the story.
Well, with that, I'm actually gonna skip through a lot very quickly because the next many pages kind of drag on. It's basically just the classic Stan Lee type origin story of this character going around learning his powers one by one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, one thing I think is the deal with all of these guys. I think the one thing he wasn't allowed to change was their actual power sets themselves. I believe they have all the same powers. It was the characters, origin stories, and visuals that were changed up. This one is probably changed up the most, I think, which is why it's the most interesting. But you know,
it makes sense though, because like will is kind of already a spiritual thing anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely more than an emotional thing.
Oh, it's not even an emotion. I hate that so much.
His motion is actually quite, justice ridden, right? He's far more in the concept of like, you're a bad guy. Come here, come at me, bro. But yeah, he's doing the whole thing where one by one, he'll discover a power. He'll go back to being himself. He'll discover power. Then, we'll cut back to trying to figure out the mystery of what the bad guys are doing.
Well, and some of the stuff
powers, right? Use it on some people.
About the Alec Holland Green Lantern. Yes, definitely. That was a lot of the same kind of stuff.
Oh, he's back.
Right. You were talking about censorship before. I don't know if this conveniently placed word bubble was a mistake or what. Oh
yeah, that was one of the things where like I did notice that the conveniently placed word bubble underwear that was going on here. That was pretty awesome. I was like, thanks, Dave.
It's weird because he feels like he's supposed to have Barbie anatomy like Silver Surfer, but then they'll do things like that. And I'm like, what's exactly supposed to be going on here?
I mean, Barbie still have a butt crack.
Yep, that's fair.
Okay.
So one of the things I thought was also really interesting too was that like I found in the as the adventure loped along, and it did seem kind of lope along from thing to thing. It wasn't like it was one, point to point action plot. Once he gets powers, it just sort of there was this element that happened and this scene that happened. They did build on each other, but it was in a very Stan Lee sort of way. It wasn't in with like modern sensibilities. But one of the things I found was really interesting about it was that Len had a chance to be crafty in much of it, and you got to see the internal monologue and a lot of stuff that you don't get to see in a lot of modern comics. The internal monologue or the idea for the lead character to think through the life that he's experiencing, and giving that reflection of an internal world that isn't just confined to the plot of the story. And that's part of the stuff that I enjoyed were those Silver Age elements. That may not have made the plot sharp, but it definitely made it more fun for me to read.
Remember when we were doing our CCC stream with the superhero Native American who came to the future?
Yes.
And the adventures.
This was reminding me a lot of
the Adventures of Space Tree.
Rick's, just noticing Canadian Shield,
where he destroys this boulder and then just wipes out a tree next to him. But I guess it's important because he's learning that there are consequences to using his powers. He's got to be careful.
When you burn up the trees, you can't put the rocks back together.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
There's actually a lot of similarities. I wonder if Rick has ever read this. Probably not. I'm going to send it to him. Because like even like the nature of how he gets his power is like there's this highly like above everything spiritual being. In this case, it's the Tree of Life that kind of just anoints him with the power, and then he's going on this kind of like little thing that shows off all the powers and stuff afterwards. There's a lot of like similarities in these two stories.
All right, so with that, it just takes a while, but eventually, this life and attack them, and at first I had to go back and reread it because I wasn't sure if this was in fact a statue or if they were actually being attacked by a monster.
It's like
but
a
I think it's
kaiju?
supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be part of this movie theater. So what's going on? And the wizard brings him to life. There's this. Sorry, were you gonna say something?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of both. It's revealed later on in spoiler alert that it's a giant robot. That the decoration has been turned into a giant robot. Oh my gosh, I
forgot about that. I can't believe
yeah.
Totally skipped my mind. So yeah, there's a big old fight.
so here's the I gotta on this page right here. So
going back. Sure.
Right. No, up,
Nope.
down the next page. So the girl who's in league with the evil preacher, Reverend Dark, she's getting ready to kill the scientist because the scientist, for whatever reason, he's got the death warrant from the preacher, and so she's getting ready to shoot him. Then he can sense that she's there, and he turns into the Green Lantern, and then she just stares aghast at this suddenly nude man with the convenient crotch shadow. And then as he flies away, she just has the most awkwardly stunned look on her face. And without reading the panels, it looks like she's just checking that guy's tuchus out.
Oh,
I mean, to be fair though, this is the appropriate emotional reaction to everything she just saw in front of her. Like, this guy just randomly, like, whether you found him attractive or not, you would be just as equally stunned at, like, what the heck just happened in front of me?
He's suddenly naked and glowing and flying away.
And then flies. I wish more characters had this type of just realistic reaction to things that happen in comics.
Although, to be fair, superhero universes are usually flooded with weird stuff happening.
Oh,
yeah, but this is like an origin of something that's not common yet. So,
Yeah,
like, yeah.
Yeah, there's the B plot that's going on here too, where there's the B plot going on here too that that this is new happening, and then there's a street cop that's just like, oh, all these superheroes are taking away my job as a cop.
Yeah.
That's happening in the background too. So this clearly is a new beginning to the whatever thing.
So anyway, it's
Kaiju action.
really
Yeah.
not an uncommon. Yeah, lots of action. It's not an uncommon thing for Stan Lee to want to kill off some character who's close to the main character to, drive them forward and send them on their journey. It's kind of a little weird that he didn't know she existed until a few days ago, and then they just kill her off like that. And it's like, you thought she was going to be like the love interest or something. Nope, out of there.
Well, I mean, part of that's the poetic justice thing, I think, too. That
right.
Stan
I mean, she
really
saves
seems to
him,
like.
but
Because, she saves him, but she's also the villain, right? She was the villain's. She was
right. She redeems herself.
Yeah.
It's just oddly, out of nowhere. I was not expecting this character just be gone after one issue. So now he's mad, and he goes and confronts these guys once and for all. And then in classic superhero format, just when he would otherwise have to decide whether or not to kill this guy or take the high road, the villain decides to pull a Last Crusade and do it for him, just turning this guy into a pile of bones, I guess, because he's no longer useful to him.
Well, and that's actually one of the weird things in the story, because that flashes back to something earlier, right after this dude comes back from Africa. Because in case you guys missed it, that's the same guy, right? That
clarify
that the preacher
who was shooting up people
and killed the hippo. The preacher curses the guy to live out every hour of his life to live out or every day of his life to live out a year, right? So he ages a year for every day he's alive until he catches the Green Lantern. And then that's never talked about, and the man doesn't look old until, like, the wizard from the distance pops the guy's cork, right? And all of a sudden pours out all of his years. And I was reading the thing, I'm thinking, are they ever going to pick up on this plot thread again? Are they, because the guy doesn't look any older, any of these other pages, are they ever going to pick up on this plot thread again? It's so weird.
Yeah. Also, Hutch wants us to know that he just can't stay connected, so he's going to stop trying to hop in.
Well, I appreciate
Thanks
that,
for coming.
man. Thanks for trying. I do appreciate that.
Anyway, one thing I will give them is that, at least hopefully, these were more than just 5 origin stories. They did eventually, once they were all established, put them together in several more issues and, do your whole alien invasion and all. brings them together kind of thing. I haven't read that, so I don't know if there is more that they're going to reveal to us later.
So who knows where that would go on there.
I will say, if your hero classically isn't allowed to kill, I am at least glad that this guy paid for everything he did in this, because I was going to be ticked if he got away with that.
Well, yeah, and I'd love to see more of the craziest thing about the whole thing to me was I couldn't understand what the deal was with the Reverend here, what his like motivations were, what his like there was so vague, and the fact that it would be like draped in the concept of like a church when it's like it doesn't feel like a church, other than like what's that cult in the first Fallout, the followers of the apocalypse. There's the followers of the cathedral.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
My assumption is that as it goes on, you're going to find out that this guy's, religion is basically death, and Green Lantern's power is basically life, right? So they're like two opposing forces.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it sure didn't seem like the guy just seemed like a stereotypical villain.
Yeah.
He was like the vampiric monk from like the early Detective Comics stories, as much as it was anything else. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It was just silly enough to be real fun.
And then, of course, he flies off into the universe, as all Green Lanterns should.
As all Green Lanterns should.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Fizz picks it out. The followers of the apocalypse were the tech and medical faction in Fallout, and they show up in New Vegas. I was thinking of the Children of the Cathedral or whatever it was. But that's
very very loosely inspired by the apocalyptic cult in Planet of the Apes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So
overall, I find the spectacle of it and the interest factor far more likable than the actual storytelling. But it's the kind of thing you're always going to want to talk about. It's like just knowing that this exists is a conversation starter in and of itself.
Right. And it was really fun to see like the Dan Gibbons pencil art. And I really enjoyed the presentation of the book as a whole too. So I was tickled that after I didn't really have an interest in reading it before you picked that one. But afterwards, I'm really glad that I did read it, and I may have to seek out the rest of those Stan Lee books.
Just to
get. I'll give you the link right here. Experience. It's literally got everything in one big PDF, whatever.
After this book, I am never going to complain about the design of a Green Lantern's outfit ever again.
Oh, that was great.
The one thing that I did not care for about this book was why or how it was Green Lantern-y at all. I mean, like why Lantern, right?
Yeah, where's the lantern part?
Where's the lantern at it?
I guess he is the lantern in this case because he's just the shining light.
Yeah. But I mean, like, why would be called the Green Lantern?
Green Torch would be a better name, I guess, or
the Green Star.
Yeah. My guess is, again, if Stanley had his way, he probably would have renamed him, but DC was going to put restrictions on him.
The Green Fairy. So now, and the thing about it though is like just because the lantern didn't have any factor, and he's Swamp Thing, not a lantern. Yeah, he's kind of Swamp Thing, but he's also he's a light elemental as well as
he's basically Hal-El, the light bringer at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He's the torch of El.
Yeah, there you go. He's he's the light bringer. There you go. Now we've come full circle. But yeah, he makes the comment in the dialogue about there's a light coming from inside of me like a lantern, and like so I could get like why he would self-apply the title Green Lantern, but other people before he like first shows up, other people are calling him the Green Lantern, like when he first appears. Like that seems a little awkward, but it's still enjoyable. So
I think it'd be better in that case if people didn't. I like it when like superheroes have a bunch of like nicknames at the beginning before they actually tell people what they'd like to be called, and everybody's got like all these different ones. Like
it's
One
the
Punch Man, where he's just the Kate
spider.
Baldy.
Yeah,
Kate Baldy's my favorite.
The only time I disliked that was in Shazam, just because they're avoiding calling him Captain Marvel, and I'm just like, that's a personal thing. That's a personal thing. I don't expect everyone.
Never forgive Marvel for that.
Well, it's not even Marvel that you shouldn't forgive for. I mean, the very fact they can't call him Marvel is because DC was like, "This, we're going to stop calling him Captain Marvel in our books." It's like,
I thought it was all because of the lawsuit.
No.
No, they threatened
it was
the
more
lawsuit
on their end because they just thought like disambiguations, like we're not even going to deal with the confusion or anything.
The thing is, there wasn't actually a lawsuit, right? What happened is that DC purchased from Fawcett all of the old stories, but before that, they had licensed the Shazam stories. But before they started, they licensed the Shazam stories after Fawcett shuttered, and they reprinted a few, but they weren't doing a book, okay? And so the Captain Marvel name just sat there doing nothing. Oh, really? I didn't see the second Shazam movie, so maybe I'll have to.
I barely saw it, so I don't remember that part, but I believe it happened.
Yeah.
Like, I think I've seen a total of 37 minutes from that movie, but they're all, like, random intervals of that 37 minutes.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. Anyway, so back to the thing is, so Marvel realized they had started going by Marvel before this, and then they realized that nobody was publishing Captain Marvel stuff, so they put out the Kree Captain Marvel book, and there'd been enough time that enough time Fawcett wasn't publishing, so there wasn't any copyright on the name Captain Marvel. Oh my gosh, that's not my name. Okay. That's so irritating. So there wasn't, so basically when the name so when they started using it, Captain Marvel, on the cover, it's not the same character. So the copyright wasn't an issue, but as the title of a book, Marvel, by publishing the Captain Marvel books, cemented the copyright as a cover issue, as like the trademark, I think, is actually, and they may have filed the trademark.
They have the trademark for it. That's the more important part there.
Right. So what happened is so Marvel could publish a book called Captain Marvel, but they didn't own the name Captain Marvel for copyright reasons. They owned their version of that name. And so DC purchased all of the Fawcett property. I mean, they had licensed them and then eventually purchased all the Fawcett properties and were printing reprints in the late 60s and the 70s in the back of World's Finest and some other stuff. And eventually they started releasing news stories under by one magic word, Shazam was the name of the book. Also just called Shazam, but it was by one magic word, Shazam. And that was and so inside of the pages, it was the Captain Marvel stories. And they called him Captain Marvel, but the name of the book was by one magic word, Shazam. And then they were doing new Captain Marvel stuff. And then throughout the 80s, Captain Marvel was appearing in All-Star Squadron and Justice League. And then the Power of Shazam book that Jerry Ordway did in the 90s was a thing. And then it was 2012. DC just made an announcement where they said they were officially not going to use Captain Marvel anymore. They just didn't want the hassle of it because they thought they could market Shazam stuff. That was the biggest thing, is they thought they could market stuff under the name Shazam. And
I'm sure it didn't hurt that, they had always used the name Shazam as the title, so people probably thought that Shazam is his name already.
Well, I mean, I don't think I don't know if that Yeah, I don't necessarily think so because they were still calling
a younger generational thing, because in the TV show he was called Captain Marvel, and that's what a lot of people know him through.
Yeah,
but
and even
sure
in
there's
the
lots of people who will make the mistake. Same way that people think Zelda is the main character, right?
yeah,
That
well,
one's
and here's
a little more ambiguous, since you have to name the main character for most of the Legend of Zelda.
Yeah. Well, and here's
they
what
look up, they see this big title, it says Shazam. You know, a newcomer would easily think, oh, his name is Shazam.
well,
Yeah,
that's
what do you
why
call Mary Marvel? That's bothered me for a long time.
yeah,
Like,
or
what do
Captain
you call
Marvel
Mary
Jr.
Marvel?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's one of those things where it's like, or even call them the Marvel family. I mean, like, that's the thing about it is, in a lot of ways, by calling the book The Power of Shazam, right? People already had figured it out, and it wasn't like it was a hard thing to get, and you could still do it that way. But it was just one of those things where it was like the idea behind one of the ideas behind the Crisis. They said, "Oh, we need to simplify this because the multiple universes are too confusing for readers," right? And like everybody reading your book already gets it. It's not hard for that.
Yeah.
Now, I think they needed to simplify it because it's a better story by making it a legacy, by putting all into one universe. It was a better story.
Marketing speak. Anytime somebody says, and this has been like this for decades now, that they need to simplify blank for an audience, they're not talking about the audience they already have. They're talking about trying to grow their audience to a lower common denominator.
But here's the thing is, after 30 years of these stunts, it never works.
It never does. Ever.
It only shrinks the audience when you pull it like that.
Yeah. And the video game industry is going through that right now, and it's shrinking the audience. But they were so used to like the audience naturally growing over time that they're thinking like, oh, there's got to be more people we could pull, and they end up getting less sales than the previous.
You look at the sales. You look at the sales numbers between the 50s and the 80s when they stopped having to report them to the government. There weren't that's not what you're really seeing. There were contractions, expansions, but it was pretty much a straight line. You know, it evened out across time. So it's just like, you know,
well, I was comparing it to the video game industry, which is newer, and that one has been naturally growing over time because it's a newer and the technology is constantly going. But they were so used to it growing that they're like, oh, there's still got to be more people we can get. And all they've been doing is bleeding their numbers in the last few years because of doing the same stunts that the comic book industry had already gone through
50 years before. So, which is the same stuff that the novel industry tried. And I mean, it's
it just never works.
It's just like, man, just you pay attention to your core audience, and your core audience will build the next audience because of their love of the properties.
Through word of mouth. That's how things naturally grow in a sustainable way, like organically.
Well, this is not about Green Lantern anymore.
Well, so what if we just
rename the shark?
So let me just say this. What if we rename him Captain Marv?
You might as well call him Cap Marv at that point.
Captain Marvel. You say it like a mouthful of marbles.
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel. That's Hillbilly Batson. You guys remember? You guys know the Lieutenant Marvels? Captain Marvel.
Hillbilly. So that's good.
Okay. Well, that's it. That's a show, guys. We gotta wrap it. It's been fun, but we've talked about all the comics. Next week, unless Twitless is still sick, we will be going over Superman #5. If Twitless is still sick, I'm probably going to mail some chicken soup with the Carolinas. I don't know, man.
No, I was just with him the other day. He's getting better.
He is getting better. Yeah. Okay, rest up. But he's also had it's been a rough semester for him too. So that PhD. Let's hope it's worth it.
Well, there's something going around. I've been popping supplements like candy, trying to make sure I don't get sick.
Well, there you go. So anyway, that's the story. Hey, also, if you don't know, New Forces page coming Friday or Saturday. We'll actually have a couple. We'll have one of the year 1 stories we're going to be dropping over on Webtoons, and we're going to be having some more another of the senior year stories from Mrs. H. I'm very excited about that. So we're on hopefully a regular production schedule with those. Be keeping up on it, and hopefully within the next week or two, we're going to be dropping another a mini comic on our Global Comics short box story featuring the 1980s hero El Hidalgo. So if you're a long-term fan, you might have read this originally, but it's a new colored, reformatted version just for you guys. So also other people write and do things that aren't me, but I don't want to talk about it.
Oh,
right
yeah,
now.
you've 2 days left to get the Zeva merch for X Dynamis Chaos before I nuke it, so you get it before it's gone. After the 15th, done. Gonzo. You can't get that pattern anymore. And also go read the Bodacious Bikini Battle Waves of British Bay. It's fun.
Oh man, that's such a fun story. So much fun. So, you got anything there going? The cartoon, I guess you still doing the Super Schooled?
News in Super Schooled is we are officially a real superhero universe because we just discovered our first major continuity error. And so I'm just going to link that in as a point of interest there if you want to check that out.
I would have figured continuity errors would be by design in your story.
Well, considering we keep trying to reset the entire timeline, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and drop that into the comments there too. That's
put
hilarious.
The link there for the Stan Lee. Just imagine if you want that. It's on readallcomics.com.
That's hilarious.
It's literally got all of them together. It's probably like 10 issues or so.
Okay, for some fan mail. I'll have to read this after the show. So,
yeah, that's it for now.
Excellent. So, till next time, get out there and read some comics. And hey, I also next week, regardless of what we're going to talk about, I'm going to be probably talking about a new manga that I started reading. I want to finish the first. I want to finish the first volume before we talk about it. Oh, hey, you lousy kid said when I reach 1,000 subscribers, Donald Trump will fight Ganondorf. What?
Pretty sure Ganondorf would win that, but okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is it Wall Knight version of Donald Trump from My Hero Macadamia?
I don't know the scaling on that character. I assume it's close to All Might, but knowing what they did, cartoon reasons, he might be stronger.
I think he's a little stronger than All Might.
Yeah. But Ganondorf's also like no less than country level, so that's still going to be a tough fight. If you pick, some of them are strong. Like
if it's Wind Waker,
so.
I'm just saying Trump actually kind of has the Link hair in that.
Sometimes he does.
You know, he can wield the Master Sword.
I feel like Trump's closer to Groose from Skyward Sword, though.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Okay, that's it. That's a show. Okay. I gotta call it. Let everybody get out there, read comics, make comics, enjoy life, and make Hyrule great again. Good night.